Gigi here, and this is Let's Build. If this is your first time, I build a Lego set timed to different media and talk about facts concerning the topic of the build. Today's build is the Lego Pokemon Eevee versus Pokemon Conquest. All footage I'm using is for science, educational, and research purposes. My content is transformative and protected under fair use. All footage is time-lapse with commentary. I apologize in advance for pronouncing names or places incorrectly. This is week 12 of braces, so you can hear my S's a bit more. Spoilers ahead, you've been warned. Specifications of the Lego set. Elevate your on-screen trainer adventures into 3D form with this LEGO Pokemon Eevee building kit for men and women, taking fans of the video games back to bonding moments on their trainer journey. This gaming merch for adults makes a cute Pokemon room decor accessory. This Eevee figure is instantly recognizable from the world of Pokemon, with its cute face and perky tail and ears. The limbs and head of this normal type Lego Pokemon figure are movable and the tail can be angled. It can be posed into authentic positions so that Eevee can be made to look like it's on the move, launching into action. Even its ears can be posed, dialing up the appearance of this charming display piece. Team up with friends and family with Build Together mode in the LEGO Builder app. It makes this an ideal LEGO set for couples or fellow Pokemon fans to enjoy as everyone can build a part of this Pokemon set using their own devices. This set contains 587 pieces. This LEGO Pokemon figure stands over 7.5 inches tall. Bio. Its ability to evolve into many forms allows it to adapt smoothly and perfectly into any environment. Pokédex entry. Its genetic code is irregular. It may mutate if it is exposed to radiation from element stones. LEGO Pokemon Eevee is guaranteed to thrive with a devoted trainer like yourself. Once a trainer, always a trainer. You felt the thrill of your first catch and were instantly pulled into a new world full of shared adventures that lasted days, months, and even years. And now you can relive some of the most memorable milestones of your trainer journey in LEGO form. We worked closely with the Pokémon Company International to build some of the most beloved and iconic characters. If you grew up with Pokemon in the 1990s, we hope that these sets will reignite the wonder of your first steps into this incredible world. If you're just discovering your journey, you can train, bond, build, and grow alongside your chosen Pokemon. Experience epic battles with your Pokemon. They're just waiting to burst out of their boxes and embark on this journey with you. Side note, I realize this part was the same in the Pikachu instruction booklet, so if they're going to be continuing to repeat this page in future sets, I may just skip that part. Bond with your Eevee. Alongside Pikachu, Eevee is one of the most beloved and iconic Pokemon. One of the original 151 Pokemon, Eevee's branched evolutions made it a very adaptable character. As its trainer in the Pokemon world, you can help it discover its potential paths, all of which are extremely popular. From the LEGO Pokemon Trainers, capturing Eevee in a fun building experience is a LEGO Pokemon trainer's dream. Yes, you can create fluffy, curved shapes with hard bricks. From paw pads to ear tips, we've captured the personality of this adorable little Pokemon, with characteristic poses and authentic details. This Eevee does not evolve, but you'll find as you build it, Eevee has evolutionary potential. Eevee is a Pokemon species in the Pokemon franchise, created by Satoshi Tajiri and designed by Morifumi Fujiwara. It appeared in the video games Pokemon Red and Blue. It later appeared in a variety of merchandise, spin-off titles, and both animated and printed adaptations of the franchise. It is also the game mascot and starter Pokemon for Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. Known as the evolution Pokemon in the games and the anime, Eevee has an unstable genetic code. which allows it to evolve into one of 8 different Pokemon, known as evolutions, depending on the situation. The first 3 of these evolutions, Vaporeon, Jolteon, and Flareon, were introduced alongside Eevee in Pokemon Red and Blue. 5 more evolutions have since been introduced in Pokemon games: Espeon, Umbreon, Leafeon, Glaceon, and Sylveon. Eevee is one of the most popular Pokemon among fans, due to its character design and availability to evolve into many forms with different Pokemon types. Concept and characteristics. Eevee is a species of fictional creatures called Pokemon created for the Pokemon media franchise. Developed by Game Freak and published by Nintendo, the Japanese franchise began in 1996 with the video games Pokemon Red and Green for the Game Boy, which were later released in North America as Pokemon Red and Blue in 1998. In these games and their sequels, the player assumes the role of a trainer whose goal is to capture and use the character's special abilities to combat other Pokemon. Some Pokemon can transform into stronger species through a process called evolution via various means, such as exposure to specific items, which is more in line with real-world metamorphosis rather than real-world evolution, which takes eons. Each Pokemon has 1 or 2 elemental types, which define its advantages and disadvantages when battling other Pokemon. A major goal in each game is to complete the Pokédex, a comprehensive Pokemon encyclopedia, by capturing, evolving, and trading with other trainers to obtain individuals from all Pokemon species. During the development of the games, series creator Satoshi Tajiri wanted to include a Pokemon that could evolve into multiple different types. The design for Eevee and its initial evolutions, Jolteon and Flareon, were provided by Japanese graphic designer Motofumi Fujiwara, while fellow graphic designer Atsuko Nishida designed Vaporeon. The designs were then finalized by lead designer Ken Sugimori, who did illustrations based on the game's sprites created by Fujiwara and Nishida. In the original Japanese games, the Pokemon was called Eevee, a name which has a similar prefix to the current English name. However, before the English versions of the game were released, Eevee was originally going to be named Eon rather than Eevee. It was renamed Eevee shortly before the English releases of Pokemon Red and Blue. Eevee in-game is a normal type, one of 18 elemental attributes that determine a Pokemon's strength and weaknesses. According to the Pokemon video games, Eevee is a mammalian creature with brown fur, a bushy tail that has a cream-colored tip, and a furry collar that also is cream-colored. Eevee has brown eyes, big ears, and pink paw pads. Eevee is said to have an irregularly shaped genetic structure, enabling it to evolve into multiple Pokemon. Fujiwara stated of Eevee, "I wanted to create a blank slate Pokemon." Eevee's design draws upon his vague childhood memories, including an instance where he became lost in a forest and encountered an undefinable creature, and he likened its appearance to a fluffy cat or dog-like creature one would see out in the country. Eevee has been voiced by Erika Schroeder in English and Chinami Nishimura in Japanese for the anime series, while Aoi Yuki provided the voice of Eevee in various video games. Yuki voices Eevee in the video games akin to Pokemon in the anime series, which say their own names when talking. Due to Eevee having multiple names across languages, Yuki was instructed to blend together various characteristics of these names in her performance. Eevee originally used a digitized cry in the past games, with Yuki voicing Eevee in Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu, and Pokemon Sword and Shield, with the cry from past games in the series being used once more from Pokemon Legends Arceus. Evolutions. Eevee is best known for being the Pokemon with the most potential evolutions, dubbed Eeveelutions. with 8 possible evolutionary forms. The first generation of Pokemon games, where Eevee was introduced, it was also the only species to have branched evolutions. All of the evolutions were designed by Atsuko Nishida except for Jolteon and Flareon, which were designed by Morifumi Fujiwara. The term evolution was originally coined by fans. It was first used in an official capacity as a pun in the official guide for the Pokemon Stadium 2, and has since been used as an official designator for the group. There are a total of 8 evolutions introduced in a variety of games. Vaporeon, a water type, Jolteon, an electric type, and Flareon, the fire type, were introduced in the first installments, Pokemon Red and Blue. Espeon, a psychic type, and Umbreon, a dark type, were introduced in their sequels, Pokemon Gold and Silver. Glaceon, an ice type, and Leafeon, a grass type, were introduced in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, while Sylveon, a fairy type, was introduced in Pokemon X and Y. A ninth flying type evolution was planned for the 2016 games Pokemon Sun and Moon, but was scrapped due to similarities to a design made by fans. Appearances: in the red, blue, and yellow versions, the player receives one Eevee in Celadon City. In Pokemon Yellow, the player was to receive an Eevee from Professor Oak at the beginning of the game as the player's starter. However, the player's rival decides to take the Eevee before the player can obtain it. Due to this, the player is forced to choose a wild Pikachu that Professor Oak had caught earlier as the starter. The player's rival, meanwhile, evolves his Eevee into any of the 3 evolutions available, depending on the outcomes of the player's encounters with him in the early parts of the game. Eevee went on to reappear in nearly every subsequent installment of the main series. In Pokemon Sun and Moon, Eevee gained the ability to use a special Z crystal item known as Eeveeum Z. This allowed it to use special Z move, a one-time use powerful attack known as Extreme Evo Boost. In Pokemon Sword and Shield, Eevee gained the ability to use a unique Gigantamax form, which could be used when Eevee utilized the game's Dynamax mechanic, which exponentially increased the Pokemon's size and changed its appearance. The transformation allowed it to access a unique attack known as G-Max Cuddle, which deals damage and infatuates opponents of the opposite gender. In 2018, remakes of Pokemon Yellow, Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, and Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu were released. Unlike the original Pokemon Yellow game, in which Pikachu was the only Pokemon able to walk around with the player outside its Pokeball, in Let's Go Eevee, the player's partner and starter Pokemon Eevee refuses a Pokeball and stays with the player in the overworld. The partner Eevee is able to wear accessories and clothes and hairstyles, which are visible in the overworld. Like Pikachu in Let's Go Eevee, the partner Eevee refuses to evolve, but is able to learn special moves not available in other games, with 8 possible moves based each on one of the Eevee evolutions. Game developer Junichi Masuda said that Eevee was chosen for the remake because of its popularity in fan art, although Psyduck was also considered before it was decided its coloring was too similar to Pikachu. Outside of the main series, Eevee has appeared in a variety of spin-offs. In Pokemon Stadium 2, Eevee stars in its own minigame called Eager Eevee. Players have to run around in circles while Apom raises and lowers a cover on berries. The object is to be among the first to grab some of the berries. It also appeared in a variety of other games, such as Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series, Pokemon Conquest, Pokemon Masters EX, Pokemon Go, Pokemon Unite, and new Pokemon Snap. It also acts as the first Pokemon available to the player in Conquest, and also does so in Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness. Promotion and reception. Due to its popularity, Eevee and its evolutions have frequently been used in much of the Pokemon merchandising, such as toys. Eevee was part of a set of Pokemon figures released for Pokemon Rumble U, with IGN labeling it as a fan favorite. A special Eevee themed Nintendo 3DS XL was released in Japan in celebration of the 15th anniversary of Pokemon Center retail establishments. Similarly, a special Nintendo Switch featuring Eevee was also released. Eevee has also been part of various Nintendo events, which allow the player to obtain special Pokemon that are being distributed. One example in Eevee's case was a shiny Eevee distribution. Eevee was also one of the several first generation Pokemon to get a special DVD with episodes starring itself during the 10th anniversary of the Pokemon franchise. Eevee and its evolutions were also featured on the side of a jet. While Eevee was not originally promoted as heavily as other Pokemon, Eevee's popularity has grown throughout the years, and it is now one of the series' most iconic Pokemon. Eevee and its evolutions have received generally positive reception, and it was noted as one of the most popular Pokemon at the offices of the Pokemon Company. Japanese fans of the series have coined November 21st as Eevee Day, due to the pronunciation being similar to Eevee's Japanese name, Eevee. Eevee Day has since officially been adopted by the Pokemon Company, and was later made an official anniversary by the Japanese Anniversary Association. Eevee has been cited as a fan favorite Pokemon and a franchise staple due to its popularity. Gita Jackson of Kotaku commented on Eevee's symbolized growth, stating that they are a blank slate. Eevee is that moment before you step out the door and start your adventure. They represent the innocence of not yet knowing who you are and the excitement of finding out. They further highlighted how the potential of Eevee made evolving one feel sad, as it meant losing part of what made Eevee unique. Eevee's evolutions and adaptability in the game's lore were also highlighted as reflecting the real-world concept of evolution, and has been cited as a surprisingly realistic interpretation of the phenomenon. Joshua Yell, writing for IGN, highlighted Eevee's popularity and universal appeal as a result of its appealing design. The versatility of the Pokemon in-game, as well as its cute design, were cited as reasons it was such an enduring Pokemon among fans of the series. Due to the versatility of the design, Eevee has received a wide amount of fan art and other creative fan works, which has been cited as being a result of the creativity the design allows fans to get out of it. Eevee's appearance in Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee received positive reviews. Hope Corrigan, writing for Game Revolution, commented on Eevee's appearance in the game. She highlighted the scene where Eevee interrupts the player's first Pokemon selection, as immediately making her nostalgic for the days of her childhood when she used Eevee. While criticizing Eevee's power in the game, she praised the emotion that it brought her, stating that, for all her overpowered attitude, this Eevee is mine and she loved me right from the beginning. I know she's just a few pixels in a virtual world, but she is my Eevee, and after all these years, I'm not ready to give that up. Siliconera writer Jenny Latta also highlighted Eevee's appearance in the game, praising the expanded role it played in the game. She also praised the interactions and smaller moments that the player could have with Eevee, citing them as making the player grow easily attached to the Pokemon. Pokémon Conquest, known in Japan as Pokémon plus Nobunaga's Ambition, is a 2012 tactical role-playing video game developed by Tecmo Koei and published by the Pokémon Company and Nintendo for the Nintendo DS. The game is a crossover between Pokemon and Nobunaga's Ambition video game series. The game was released in Japan on March 17, 2012, and was released in North America, Australia, and Europe later that year. The prospect of a crossover between these two series was formed due in part to the Pokemon Company president, Tsunekaru Ishihara, enjoying Nobunaga's Ambition, with Tecmo Koei handling programming, art, graphics, and sound, while the two companies collaborated on design documents and concepts. When being localized into English, the designers opted not to change Japanese names and terms due to how weird the setting would feel without them. Gameplay: the player, accompanied by an Eevee, travels throughout the Ransei region, befriending Pokemon and battling warriors and warlords to conquer and unite the region. Warriors and warlord leaders can join the player's party once defeated, allowing the player access to more Pokemon. The gameplay is turn-based strategy and is a tactical RPG, unlike the main series Pokemon games, with different Pokemon capable of using different attacks and means of movement. Warriors and warlords also have unique battle-changing powers that boost their Pokemon's abilities, but may only be used once per battle. These effects range from increased attacking power, health restoration, or temporary invincibility. Unlike the main series Pokemon games, each Pokemon is capable of only using one move. This move is determined by the Pokemon species and is usually picked to represent that species. For example, Exactadrill uses its signature move Drill Run. Additionally, if only 200 of the 649 Pokemon that existed at the time of release are available in the game, the main series capture system is replaced by a minigame where a warrior attempts to form a link with a wild Pokemon by coordinating button presses with a display, reminiscent of Dance Dance Revolution. The main series leveling system is replaced by a concept called Link, a percentage which increases due to a certain maximum and reflects that Pokemon's battling statistics. Each warrior has a natural affinity to certain types, which grants it increased maximum link with Pokemon of those types. In addition, every warrior and warlord has one evolutionary family of Pokemon with which they may form a 100% or perfect link. In addition, certain warlords can form links with legendary Pokemon. A warlord's costume almost always resembles the appearance of at least one of their perfect link species. Additionally, the main series evolution system is changed to reflect the removal of Pokemon levels. Instead of a Pokemon reaching a specific level, they evolve by reaching certain conditions, such as reaching a specific link, winning a battle in a specific kingdom, or having a stat reach a certain value. Warlords are also able to evolve by reaching certain conditions, such as achieving a certain link percentage with a Pokemon. Other than the player, warlords cannot evolve until after completing the main story. Plot: Pokémon Conquest follows a legend that whomever unifies all 17 kingdoms of the Ransei region will have a chance to encounter the legendary Pokémon Arceus, who created the region. This legend is responsible for the current conflict in the region and the end of its peaceful era. The protagonist, the warlord of Aurora Kingdom, meets a girl named Oichi, who teaches them that Oda Nobunaga wishes to use Arceus's power to destroy Ransei. The player character eventually defeats Nobunaga and unites the region, finding Arceus and battling Nobunaga again. After defeating him, the player learns that Nobunaga intended to destroy Arceus in order to unite Ransei and remove the cause of the conflict, but relents due to the player being unaffected by their connection to Arceus. The kingdoms are then returned to their proper owners. Development: Development of Pokémon Conquest began as a result of a mutual interest between the creators of Pokémon and Nobunaga's ambition, with the Pokémon Company president Ishihara particularly enjoying the latter. He later asked Pokémon Team about the idea of combining the two series, and asked Hisashi Koinuma to help create the project. Tecmo Koei, the owner of Nobunaga's ambition, was involved in helping design the game, including programming, art, graphics, and sound, while the design documents and concepts were a collaborative effort. To Koinuma, the most difficult part of the game was balancing the challenge to ensure that it would be more likely to appeal to Pokemon fans. The game was developed by Osamu Maeda. The game was first revealed at Shueisha's Jump Festa anime and manga event on December 17, 2011. Nintendo and Tecmo Koei announced the game during the event and announced its 2012 release. On April 4th, 2012, it was announced on Pokemon.com that Pokemon plus Nobunaga's Ambition would be released in the United States June 18th, 2012, as Pokemon Conquest. Seth McMahill, assistant manager of product marketing at Nintendo, stated that the English localization process was not difficult, noting that localization was handled by the Pokemon Company International near Nintendo headquarters. The localizers discussed how accurate the localization should be, such as using Japanese terms and names. They decided not to change these elements, Maka Hill stating that obviously Japanese characters having English names would seem strange. There were also discussions about marketing the game, with Maka Hill stating that strategy role playing games were less popular outside of Japan, and there were worries about making it appeal to younger players. They ultimately settled on the marketing angle of a new way to play Pokemon. The game was released in Japan March 17, 2012, in North America on June 18th, in Australia June 21st, and in Europe July 27th. Reception: Pokemon Conquest received positive reviews, possessing a score of 80 over 100 on Metacritic. In their review, Famitsu reviewers praised the game's accessibility for young players, high replay value, and the mixture of Pokemon with a traditional Japanese historical setting. It is considered one of the best Nintendo DS games by multiple websites, including IGN, Games Radar, and Nintendo Life. According to Japanese video game sales analyst Media Crate, Conquest was the highest selling game of its initial launch week in Japan, selling over 172,000 copies. By the end of 2012, the game had sold over 341,000 copies in Japan. One of the fun Easter eggs of this build is the color chart hidden in Eevee's head that represents all the potential evolutions. The only downside to this Eevee is that his face is so flat, and I wish the leg connections could maintain the poses better. I didn't want the gameplay for Eevee to be a repeat of the Pikachu builds, which is why I chose to play Pokemon Conquest, a Pokemon game where you start with Eevee, other than Let's Go. I've never played a strategy game before like this, so I went in pretty blind. Total build time 1 hour, 13 minutes, 53 seconds, which means you could watch 4 of the Eevee centric episodes: The Battling Eevee Brothers, The Rivalry Revival, A Dancing Debut, and Party Dancecapades. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Remember to like, subscribe, share, ring that bell, all the things for the YouTubes. Thank you.